I even ran a duty roster for the controllers, which were 06 rank, colonels, captains in the Navy, and we were in the middle of a bloody Cold War.
Okay, so it was during the Cold War.
This was in 1960. I arrived in 63.
Right.
The study was completed in 64. The Warsaw Pact and NATO were lined up along a divided Europe. We were bristling with arms. We had 50 divisions here. The Soviets and the Warsaw Pact had 100 divisions here. World War III was just moments away.
Okay.
That's how close it was.
So
young people like yourselves cannot imagine what that would be like.
So we're in the middle of what's called the Cold War, and you're reading about our relationships and interactions with alien races.
Well, let me give you some reason, first of all, why the study was concluded. In February of 1961, there was a massive flyover of unidentified objects coming out of the east from the Soviet Warsaw Pact area, flying toward the west, coming over our lines, over NATO lines, over Germany, over France. These objects were very high, very fast, in formation, obviously under intelligent control.
Did you
and they
see
were
this?
Circular disc shapes.
Did you see it?
I didn't, no.
Oh. Was it filmed?
I wasn't there in 61.
Was it filmed?
Well, oh yes, we had film of it.
Really?
The point is that Gordon Cooper, who I'm sure you're familiar with, one of our famous astronauts from the old years, Gordon's gone now. But Gordon shared with me one time, and he shared it publicly, he said, when I flew over Germany in the 50s, he says we'd see these things all the time. He says we wondered what they were, because it was obviously they were under intelligent control. They would fly over our lines, they'd come out of the Soviet sector flying west, as I said, over France, Germany, France, England. They'd turn north over the southern coast of England, and then they would disappear off of NATO radar over the Norwegian Sea.
Okay, and you knew, or I assume, the government figured out they weren't Soviet. Is that right?
The government didn't know from the very beginning, at least NATO didn't, what they were. We thought they were Soviets for a time. We learned that the Soviets thought they belonged to us.
Right.
But they were very high, very obviously under intelligent control, in formation, and they would come sometimes en masse. The flyover in February of 61 was a couple of hundred of them. They couldn't count them.
Well,
and they thought, oh my God, World War III started here.
Exactly. Didn't the base at that point aim and shoot?
Everybody got on alert. We didn't have the capability to shoot because they were too high and they were too fast. And in those days, we did not have the aircraft nor the weaponry to deal with this. And they were always obviously under intelligent control.
So this is why the study was put into effect.
The study was initiated in 61. I arrived in 63. It was concluded and published in 64. And that, as I said, what's changed my life.
Okay, what was the conclusion? You said they came to some conclusion.
The study was designed initially to determine if there was a threat to Allied forces in Europe. It was a military study, a simple beginning. What the hell is going on? Is there a threat here?
Is there? Was there?
And they concluded after 3 years, apparently not. No threat.
Really?
That's right. Now, the reason they concluded that is, first of all, the technology that they had been exposed to, the technology that had been repeatedly demonstrated to our military, to the Soviets, to everybody, was so far beyond anything we had or even could imagine that the technology was almost out of this world. No pun intended. So, if there had been a threat from these guys, whoever these guys were, it would have been over a long time ago. As one of our old generals used to say, they could have cleaned our clock from the very beginning, because they demonstrated repeatedly technology that we couldn't even begin to touch.
Okay, this is in the 60s, But didn't Eisenhower have a meeting and make a
No.
treaty with these people
Okay.
long before that time?
Let me get back here and tell you that this study was the beginning for me.
Okay.
It opened the doors of my mind, so to
Right.
speak. I could never leave it. I could never lay it down. I could never walk away from it after that. And I kept, over the years, learning more and studying more. And as I said, it's lucky I didn't end up in jail, because I drove my friends up the wall. I pushed my security clearance to the limit. I used to get into classified file cabinets and sort through material and look for photographs and reproduce things that should not have been reproduced. I was a damn nuisance,
So
I'm
where's
sure.
the stuff that you...
You see, I knew just this much, but I wanted to know this much.
I understand.
And over the years, I learned this much.
Okay, but what happened to all that stuff that you photocopied or whatever?
Oh my God.
Is that a secret? Is that part of the reason why you haven't been...
The material that I photocopied, I don't have anymore, because being somewhat intelligent, I knew that having classified material in my possession that I was not authorized to have meant jail. And as I said, jokingly said, going to Fort Leavenworth for 30 years. So I destroyed it, but I put it here.
Right.
And I remembered, and I memorized, and I kept notes for years and years. I had a whole series of notes.
Well, okay, to get back to my question, though, Eisenhower had a meeting, theoretically, with aliens.
I learned
Truman
all
had
this.
given a shoot-down order years before you ever read the study. So
Eisenhower
did the
never
study-
gave that order. That was given by an Air Force general. I can't remember the year, but I believe it was in the early 60s, that an Air Force general gave an order to shoot them down. That order was revoked within 90 days because something like 30 aircraft. Because when we started shooting at them, they had a unique way of eliminating all of the electrical systems in our aircraft. They didn't shoot bullets at us. We shot bullets at them and missiles and everything else. But if we attacked them, they had an incredible scientific procedure where they could literally nullify all of the electrical operations in our aircraft. Now, if you're flying a high-performance jet and you're at 30,000 feet going 400, 500 miles an hour, and all of a sudden everything goes dead. And jet pilots used to share that flying one of those 100 series planes was like flying an anvil. They had no glide capability. They were heavy. They were overly armed, and they were heavy aircraft. The only thing keeping them in the sky was a powerful jet engine that kept them going. So if they lost all of their electrical controls, they couldn't even steer, for God's sake. The plane just began going, as I said, it fell like an anvil. Well, we lost a lot of aircraft. A lot of guys got out. They bailed out in time. A lot of planes were lost. We lost a few pilots.
Okay, so...
Now, that order to shoot them down was revoked within 90 days.
Right.
And they never issued that again because they learned their lesson. Don't mess with these guys.
Okay, but you're telling me that you read a report in which the military states that their technology is not up to par, so that they can't compete with people that are flying over, invading their airspace, et cetera, et cetera. They don't know, I'm assuming they didn't know what their MO was. They didn't know what they were there to do, right?
Let me tell you briefly what the conclusions of this 3-year study was. They concluded that apparently there was not a threat involved, because the repeated demonstrations of technology were so beyond anything we could do or match, that if they were angry at us or they're hostile, it'd be over.
Okay, but the logic of that is not, it doesn't fit.
Let me
Just because you
continue.
can't compete doesn't mean it's not a threat. It still could be a threat.
Let me go on.
Could be an implied threat.
This 3-year study did not find any example of overt hostility on their part.
Okay.
They were not shooting our planes down. We would shoot at them, but they were, poo-poo. It's like throwing little pebbles at somebody, see?